Introducing the Beam Wrench 3.0. Have you ever met a beam that you couldn't roll? Me neither. But as I get older, it's important to use my brain more than my giant biceps. So for 10 minutes and $500 in Advantech, you could have a beam wrench. Or you could order it for me for 3 easy installments of $943 plus shipping. It comes in imperial and metric, which, let's be honest, they're the same thing. Beam wrench!
Seriously, it's that heavy?
Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
This video is sponsored by Huber Engineered Woods, the makers of Advantech Subfloor and Zip System Sheathing. So in this video, we're going to get into the roof sheathing and also the overframing. So what I just did there is I ripped a 22-foot, 11-inch sleeper valley. You'll see what that means in just a moment. But we decided to start beveling our valleys the way that Ben Morton does.
I mean, I don't want to brag or anything. So I won't, because that's gauche. Come on. There we go. Hey, I say that's straight. Straight as the sun. Hey, that's only like a $600 piece of wood. Nice. Yeah, so Ben said, he's like, you know, for 5 minutes worth of work, it's worth it. It actually is 5 minutes more. It takes that long to cut.
How many of you guys pre-cut your roof sheathing? I tend not to pre-cut the cross-cut pieces at each end of a roof, but I do like to pre-cut on the ground, especially with the track saw, any of our rips. It goes a lot faster on the ground than it does up on the roof, and then you don't get sawdust all over the roof. So we aim for rips that are no smaller than 24 inches, and we try to balance all of this out to minimize waste. I don't think that a track saw is a necessary tool for a framer, but I do find that in the last 3 years that we've had it, it's making things go much quicker and cleaner, depending, obviously, right? It's like every tool. You can waste time with the tool too, you just have to know when to use it. This is one of those times where I feel like it's a huge time savings. Now, I'm stacking all of our rips on the left there next to the windows. We end up using all of those scraps later to pack out our LP trim, which only comes in 5/4 width. So again, we're just trying to manage scrap as best we can, especially because summer of 2021, lumber prices were insane. Who wants to cut some California jacks? At least that's what we call them. These are the jacks that go from the ridge to an overframed valley or California valley. That's what we call them on the west coast of the United States. All 2x6 here. So what I like to do is I have identical numbers for both sides of the ridge. I cut one batch, plumb cuts on my right, and then seat cuts on my left. I crown all the boards the same direction. I use stock that is long enough that I can get my longest jack and my shortest jack, and that way I only have to make one compound miter, which is that cut that I'm about to make. So seat cut, set your saw to the tilt of the roof that you're landing on. By the way, this wasn't your regular roof. So 712 gable landing on a 512 roof. So 712 plumb and seat cut, but your saw is beveled to the roof you're landing on, which is a 512 or about 22.5 degrees. Who makes the square you're using? Well, Martinez Tools makes the square. However, they're discontinued. He doesn't make them anymore. He only made a few of them. I hurried up and bought one. This depth adjustment is getting a little sticky, so I just need to spray a little bit of lube in there. I prefer to plumb cut my seat cuts. They're compound miters. 7/12 seat cut's not that long on 2x6, but still, with the base plate loose, I can essentially plunge in right along that line. I don't know, for me, there's just less binding, it's a little simpler. When I have to cut a bunch of overframe jacks, I like to put as many 2x6s on the saw, or whatever the stock is, on the sawhorses, crowned away from me. All plumb cuts go on the right. That way, when I pull a number, it's to the sharp to sharp to sharp. That's what we always call it. So it is the long point of your seat cut, which is also the long point of your bevel cut. And since I'm hooking the long point of the plumb cut, sharp to sharp to sharp to sharp. That's just how we do it. So this way, I'm cutting to the sharp of the bevel, which is easier for me to cut since I'm right-handed the way that I'm doing it, as you can see. Then I take all of those boards and I stack them longest to shortest, and that's one side of the roof. In this case, I needed 3 more, so I grabbed some, I think 20s or 16s out of the garage. And it's gonna look like there's a ton of waste here because I'm only gonna cut my 3 smallest jacks. Then the remaining scrap, I just flip over, and I already have the opposite side, sharp and sharp, so I'm gonna hook that and then measure to the long or the sharp of the plumb cut. So everything is sharp to sharp to sharp to sharp, but I'm only making 1 compound miter cut and essentially getting 2 rafters out of it. And I'm also cutting the crowns out of the boards to some degree. I've already culled them so that they're not super ugly, but this just kind of contributes to a flat roof. So that was one side of the roof. All of those jacks from longest to shortest are cut. They're stacked from longest to shortest. Now I'm gonna take all the cutoffs, flip them over, and all I have to do is hook the long point and measure to the long point of the plumb cut. So that's what I'm doing here. And I'm working through my list. They're all identical on both sides of the roof. You can see the video above. That's going to take you through the whole process on how do you figure out all the angles, calculate your valley sleepers, and the jacks. So getting 2 jacks out of a 20-foot 2x6 leaves me with about, well, I think maybe about 16 inches of scrap if you measure from the long point. Not too shabby. It's all about scrap management. Oh man, those scraps, because summer of 2021, lumber prices nearly quadrupled from the year before. So that 16-inch scrap cost the same as a 4-foot stick the year before. Oh my goodness, I just can't even believe what lumber prices did. Oh, let's see here.
I beat you.
You did.
Here's a pro tip for calculating jacks, but seriously, go check out the video. It goes through all the math. The pro tip is I always start with a 12-inch jack, as you can see, because the heel of the plumb cut and the heel of the C cut, they don't really touch. It's just big enough it doesn't split out. And then I calculate from there until I get to the length of a common rafter.
Don, are you still going?
I'm over here.
Is that your boat? I mean,
It's a little less impressive.
So I sent the drone up to just get some footage of the last part of the roof being sheathed, primarily to show our fall protection system. Yes, we use fall protection even on a 512. It's only a 1-story house, but here in Washington State, anything above 4 foot when you're on a platform bigger than 45 by 45 requires some form of fall protection. Up on the roof, a lifeline and harness is just the easiest way for us to do that. We typically only work in fall restraint, and what that means is we lead out enough rope that we can't go over the edge at the eaves. Especially on a 1-story house wearing a decelerator, you would hit the ground. Once you work in fall restraint, then you kind of can forget about the rope itself. You can just focus on not tripping over it. And yes, I know, well, people feel less safe because they're gonna trip on a rope. Well, the fact of the matter is you're not gonna fall off the roof. So you trip and fall, it's not a big deal because you're not going off the edge of the eaves. We stay in fall restraint, lead out just enough rope to get to the eave, maybe plus 1 foot. But then once you get farther up the roof, go ahead and choke up on that rope. And now you don't even have to worry about it at all. You're safe, you can just worry about sheeting, and yes, watch where you put your feet. You might be wondering, why are you taping the seams on that sheathing? So this is the Zip System sheathing, and again, this video is sponsored by Huber Engineered Woods, the makers of Zip System sheathing. So we use this sheathing on the walls and the roof. The roof is 1/2 inch and it's sienna colored. And the reason why we tape it is that dries us in. So the red facing or the green facing on the walls basically takes the place of your weather resistant barrier or your roofing underlayment, depending on your local codes, of course. So once we tape the seams, we are now dried in, with the exception of the ridge, because that's going to get ridge vent, but we are now dried in, and the roofing is applied directly to this. I'll put a link in the description. So I'm taping the valley. I like to use 6-inch tape in the valley, and what I do is I measure 3 inches off and snap a line to keep the tape straight. And for me, it just makes it a little easier to work the tape. It's fully adhered. Make sure that you roll the tape. The acrylic adhesive is pressure sensitive or pressure activated. Anyway, you can look it up. It definitely holds better when you roll it. If you don't believe me, go do a test. Put 2 pieces on a wall, roll one, don't roll the other, and come back a week later and you're gonna see how much better one holds over the other. So that's what I'm doing here. Last step, I'm done. Now it's ready for the roofers. So here is the time lapse of the 712 garage gable. It's basically a double gable, almost triple gable. Double gable, 712, landing on the 512. So I'm not gonna get into all of this in this video. Go check out how to calculate an overframe, and that's where we get into all of the math. 2x12 sleepers, because that's what our engineer requires. It allows for more nails into the roof below, fully sheathed under the overframe for seismic reasons. Basically what that does is it carries the roof diaphragm loads down through the shear walls. So the big advantage of pre-cutting, the valleys were pre-cut. Remember we saw the bevel? The commons were pre-cut for the little gable and the one that we're currently working on. And all of the jacks are pre-cut. It saves a lot of time cutting this on the ground. Before we can sheet this section of roof, of course, I need to put in a couple of lookouts, hang the fly rafters, barge, whatever you want to call them. We call them fly rafters. When it comes to these roofs, this is just my personal preference, is to start at the top so that that first longest row is parallel with the ridge. I just find it works a little easier working downhill. It also means that when Kyle's cutting, he can measure essentially all of the valley pieces to the sharp. And it's not like it's a big deal, but I just find that it's a little easier. I kind of just get into a rhythm, so put the next row on and the row below it, use up your scrap as you go. Now I have a reference point for this sheet that needs to cut around those fly rafters and land on the ridge below. Is it a big deal? No. Can every framer measure those pieces accurately? Yes. I just try to idiot-proof where I can. Last thing we do, of course, tape all the seams, roll all of that tape, tape the valley, and then get off of that roof. We're about done. We actually finished the opposite side. Actually, I finished the opposite side by myself the next morning because Kyle had an appointment and I was leaving for vacation. So it's not just the seams that we're taping. It's also like the plumbing boots, any roof penetrations that we can, and in this case it's a skylight. So I start at the bottom, and I use that little blue tool, which is a quick flash. If you just Google quick flash, it makes it really easy to get those inside corners. And then of course, don't forget to roll your tape. So bottom piece on first, then I like to stretch tape the corners, then the sides, then the top, and then I stretch tape those corners. It doesn't technically matter because the tape sticks to itself, but if it's easy to shingle from the bottom up, shingle from the bottom up. Sometimes we can't for various reasons when it comes to detailing, but most of the time we can. This stretch tape stuff is pretty cool. It's hard to see here because of the angle of the sun, and when I tried to brighten the shadows in post-production, it made it look like some kind of weird cartoon. You'll see it when I come around to the top, and then when we get to the siding video, I'll show it how we flash our windows. This stuff is ridiculously sticky. This was about 4 o'clock after work, and it was hot out. And there was times I edited it out not to bore you guys, but there was times when I just sat there with my heart racing because it was hot. And then when the tape gets hot, it sticks to itself really easily. So this may or may not, but definitely did take a couple of takes to actually get it to be somewhat seamless. Pun intended. Pun intended. I used 6-inch tape all the way around, and that way I got about 3 inches up the curbing and about 3 inches on the deck. Personally, I don't think it matters, whatever tape you have. But what we like about this is now we know that the curbing is sealed to the roof deck. When the roofers come back and they do their step flashing and all that good stuff, we just have one more added layer of insurance and protection. We build these houses as spec homes, and we're in this community. We've been in this community since 2000, off and on, and we're gonna be here for at least another decade. So, we're gonna find out if there's callbacks. People are gonna call us. So, let's just get it right, even if it's a little bit redundant. By the way, there's the stretch tape, and this stuff is stretchy.
Okay, here is our preferred fall protection. Strap around the ridge with a chafe guard. My lifeline has a snap hook that snaps around that anchor. I'm connected to the rope by the prusik rope grab, which is then connected to my shock absorber by this carabiner. So here's how the prusik knot works. Hand underneath slides up, opposite to slide down. Once I have the desired length, just let go. That would be fall restraint, by the way. I can't go anywhere. But you see how the knot grabs. Easy to use, fast, super light, no metal parts banging around in the middle of my back. Once that rope is set up, we just leave it there. Who knows who needs to be back up here. Now I'm disconnected. Of course, the ladder's connected. And the obligatory drone shots at the end of, I think, pretty much all my videos. This was before the front overframes went on. So now you can kind of see the body of the main roof landed over the top of the back roof. That's all taped, that's all done. And then we overframe. Again, that's for structural reasons. Our engineer prefers that roof sheathing on the front or the left side, it basically goes from the plates to the ridge. And then we're gonna land the overframe on top of that. Very strong in an earthquake and hurricane winds, which thankfully we don't have. We have just lots of rain and the potential for the big one, the big earthquake. And the obligatory shot at the end, the roof is done. Well, not technically. We had to scrounge up some sheets for the back of the garage. Kyle took care of that because I was heading on vacation. Nice hot day. So there's a shot of the nice straight line for the valley tape, and then you can see the air venting for the ridge vent on that front garage roof. Hey, I want to thank everybody for following along in this series. We got 1, maybe 2 more videos to go. We'll get into siding next time. And yes, if you follow Awesome Framers, we do this on every single house. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.